Chapter 15 Kitchen Explorations. Ever since Tweet gave the tour, the Octonauts were allowed to go into the Octopod as much as they liked. The Octonauts had picked out their rooms, and some, like Dashing, Shellington, and Peso, who had a lot of supplies, started moving their belongings and equipment into the submarine. It was almost time for the submarine to launch. Everyone was feeling it. Once the training for driving the Octopod and Gups were finished, they would set off. The way the Octonauts were being taught blew the Vegemals away. There was this box, and when a crew member sat in front of it, it would light up and show the bottom of the ocean. The creature would pretend to drive by using a fake wheel and buttons. The screen would follow the direction of the wheel, almost as if they were actually driving the Gup in the ocean. Tweak had called it virtual reality, and she said that it was necessary for training. "Wouldn't want the Gups to crash on the first try," she had said flippantly, one paw on her hip as she crunched on a carrot. The Vegemals themselves were taught how to drive through this way, and Tunip could tell that his friends had a blast, especially Barrett, the orange Vegemal. They were all yelling in fear and excitement, almost feeling the fast dives and spins of their virtual Gup. They had to be brought back to the task at hand by Tweak and the other Octonauts, who were waiting for their turn, but Tunip could see that the crew was smiling at them. Smiling was good. It meant that they were happy. The Vegemals marveled at all the new creations and technology that were around them. It was never like the tools they used at home, and for the most part, they were happy about it. Until the Vegemals saw their future kitchen on the Octopod during the tour. Tunip remembered how he and his brothers, they weren't really related, but they were basically family, all stood in place, growing uncharacteristically quiet as Tweak showed off the room. The Octonauts still don't know them that well, Tunip thought, because they didn't comment on their hesitance. But after Tweak directed everyone down the hallway into the next room, Gruber, the tall purple Vegemal, leaned towards Tunip. Although none of the crew knew their language, Gruber whispered anyway, "I have no idea how to use any of that stuff." And it was true. Tunip didn't know what he was expecting, but he didn't think those kitchen supplies would look so different than the tools at home. They were completely foreign to him and the other Vegemals. There was no way they could start cooking automatically on the first day of their voyage. That's why the Vegemals gathered up in the kitchen the next day. "All right," Tunip said in his native tongue. "We need to know how to use everything before the launch. First things first, let's see what each thing actually does." The Vegemals scattered, each exploring another part of the kitchen, opening lids, checking drawers, and basically moving anything that could budge. Tunip was rummaging through what looked like a drawer of spoons and forks when he heard a slam and a yelp. Whirling around, he saw this huge box thing against the wall. There was a thumping noise emanating from it, as well as a high-pitched voice. "Hold on," Tunip waddled to the door. "I'm coming." Tunip pried open the huge door. The pink Vegemal, Coddish, tumbled out. "Coddish, what were you doing in there?" Tunip scolded. "I just wanted to see what was inside, but it got dark all of a sudden," Coddish replied, standing up. He wrapped his arms around himself and shivered. "Whatever that thing was, it's super cold." "Hey, Tunip!" Gruber's deep, gravelly voice echoed slightly through the room. "I think one of these machines is similar to our Prieto." Sure enough, when Tunip got to the item in question, Gruber was right. It was another, smaller box, with a lid on one side that could be opened. Inside was a metal crosshatch. It looked like it could hold trays for baking. "We could use this to make fish biscuits." Gruber licked his lips, already in anticipation. Tunip playfully rolled his eyes at the eagerness. "We now just need to figure out how it works," Tunip replied. He took a couple steps back, surveying the box. With a leap, Tunip was able to grab the ledge of the box and pull himself up. "Oh," he said, curious and surprised. There seemed to be circles drawn on the top of the box. There were also knobs that could be turned. Tunip moved onto a circle and studied the dials. He put a flipper to his mouth, humming in concentration. Making a fire was so much easier. But oh well. Tunip put a flipper against one of the dials, attempting to turn it. After a couple tries, Tunip figured out that he would have to push forward first before turning it. "Gruber, is anything happening?" He could see the top of the purple Vegemal's head as Gruber opened the lid and peered inside. "No. Maybe we're supposed to wait a little?" "Maybe," Tunip agreed. "If nothing happens in the next couple minutes, then I'll try another knob." He wasn't even sure what was supposed to happen. There wasn't any wood in the box. In fact, none of his friends found any wood at all, so there must be another way this Prieto would work, right? If there was anything Tunip had learned so far from Tweak's lessons, was that technology had a weird way of doing things, and a lot of those methods seemed invisible. A knock brought him out of his thoughts, and he found the sea otter scientist at the entrance of the kitchen. He was knocking on the wall nearby, since the doors had automatically opened. "Hello, everyone," Shellington said with a suppressed smile. "Am I interrupting anything? Can I come in?" "Sure," Tunip replied cheerfully. But since Shellington would not understand Vegemalese, he motioned the otter to come inside. Tunip could tell that Shellington was vibrating with excitement, but trying to hold it in. All the other Vegemals stopped their exploring and looked up at the visitor. "It's a pleasure to meet all of you again. My name is Shellington." He directed towards himself. "What are your names?" "Tunip," the yellow Vegemal replied. "Gruber," the large, light purple Vegemal grinned. "Barrett," the orange Vegemal jumped. "Coddish," the pink Vegemal waved ecstatically. "Tomino," the small, red Vegemal smiled shyly. "Charchard," the smaller, dark purple Vegemal raised a flipper. "Albachoy," the green Vegemal straightened up. "Cornin," the blue Vegemal nodded. "My, there's a lot of you," Shellington chuckled. "I'll do my best to remember all your names. I was actually planning to talk to you earlier, but I didn't want to disturb you. It's nice that now your schedules have cleared up a bit. May I put this on the counter?" Shellington motioned the bag on his shoulder. Tunip nodded, feeling happy at his consideration. This creature really was nice. It seemed like Shellington couldn't hold it in anymore, and his smile reached its full size. He put the bag on the counter right next to the area Tunip stood on, and he pulled out a notebook and pencil from his bag. "I've never really met a species such as yours. Can I ask you some questions? I'd really like to know about your culture and way of life." Tunip nodded. The other Vegemals went back to exploring, confident that Tunip would be able to answer everything. Tunip shifted a bit. Was it him, or was the room getting a bit warm? Shellington put pencil to paper. "Professor Inkling has told me a lot about your clan on the island. Are there any other Vegemal groups out there, possibly living in other tropical areas?" Tunip had always wondered about that himself, especially when he was a child. He would always look out into the ocean, wondering what was past the horizon and if there was anyone like him in his family. Whenever he asked the elders, they would reply that they have never seen another of their species. However, Tunip didn't believe that those words necessarily meant that they were the only ones. There was a chance that there could be more out there. But since all of that could not be portrayed to the scientist, Tunip just shrugged his shoulders. "I see," Shellington replied, writing down the answer. "Who knows? Maybe we'll find more of your kind during our voyage." Tunip trilled at that, but started to feel incredibly uncomfortable. Why was it so hot? "The professor has noticed that there was no meat or fish in the dishes you gave him. Are you all herba?" Suddenly the heat escalated and overwhelmed Tunip, particularly his bottom fins. He yelped and jumped off the box out of reflex. Once he landed, he repeatedly hopped on the ground, his fins sensitive to the floor. "Ow, ow, ow." "Are you okay?" Shellington asked, alarmed. "That really hurt," Tunip whined in pain, forgetting that he wouldn't understand. "Tunip!" his brothers chorused, running up to him. They grouped around him, blocking Shellington from Tunip's vision. "What happened? Are you hurt? Do you need anything?" Tunip tried to brush them off, horrified that he made them worry so much. "I'm okay. The pain's going away." It was true. It was slowly subsiding, making the pain dull. "You should sit down, though," Gruber pressed, and Tunip complied. Tunip looked down at his bottom flippers. They were a darker shade of aquamarine. How did he get burned? The electric stove was on. "I'm sorry. I should have seen that." The Vegemals surrounding Tunip turned around, getting out of the injured Vegemal's line of vision. Tunip saw Shellington turn the knob that he had moved earlier. "What?" everyone chorused, and Shellington looked back at them. "We should put those fins under cold water," Shellington said. He came towards Tunip and knelt in front of him. Tunip saw a gentleness there that made him stare for a second. "Can I pick you up?" Tunip nodded, and soon he was high off the ground. Shellington seated him on the edge of the sink, letting Tunip's flippers dangle under the faucet. "I hope the plumbing is working," Shellington muttered as he pulled a handle. Nothing happened. "It isn't." Shellington picked Tunip up again and looked around. He then went back to the box thing where Coddish had been stuck in before. He opened the door. "Maybe the refrigerator?" Tunip was placed in it, and he sat down. The door stayed open this time. Tunip immediately felt the cold on his bottom flippers. Tunip sighed. It was already feeling better. The other Vegemals gathered around Shellington. They didn't want Tunip to be alone. Tunip smiled a bit at that. "That platform you were standing on is an electric stove," Shellington explained. "An electric current runs through it, making those circles heat up significantly." Tweak had taught him and the other Vegemals what electricity was while training them, so this all made sense to Tunip. "You can put pots and pans on it to boil or fry food, or cook in other ways. Hasn't anyone taught you how to use it?" Shellington seemed concerned at that. Everyone shook their heads, Tunip included. Maybe Shellington could teach them how to use this equipment? Because while they may not be playing with fire in a literal sense, these contraptions were dangerous. Unfortunately, they had to learn that the hard way. But at least he was the one who got hurt. Tunip didn't want any of his brothers to feel pain. Sure enough, Shellington said what Tunip hoped for. "I can't cook any fancy dishes or anything, But I know how to use kitchen appliances, Shellington said. I had to learn when I moved to university. I'd be more than happy to help you. Tunip beamed. Although he hoped for this kind of reaction, it was never guaranteed. Shellington really was nice. Thank you, Tunip cried, and everyone followed suit. Shellington seemed to get what they were saying, because his lips quirked up into a smile. All right, then. He looked at Tunip. How are you feeling? Tunip lifted his bottom fins and looked at them. They still stung a little, but it was a lot better than before. He nodded and smiled, trying to portray that he improved. It probably didn't come across well, because Shellington inspected Tunip's flippers anyway. It's not blistering or anything, so the damage is not too bad. Do you want to try to stand? Tunip nodded again and stood up in the refrigerator. His flippers felt all right. Not completely healed, but he didn't have to jump around anymore. They look pretty good, Shellington mirrored his thoughts. But when I'm teaching, you can still sit down. You'll be able to see everything from where you are. Tunip was startled at that. Shellington was willing to teach them now? Oh, and there's one thing I'd like to ask, in exchange for this lesson. There was a twinkle in Shellington's eyes as he turned toward the rest of the group. Could you please teach me your language? I think it's beautiful, and I would love to understand you all better. Tunip and his brothers were stunned. No one else had asked them to learn their language before. The joy that vibrated through Tunip was hard to contain. Of course, he said happily. The other Vegemals trilled their affirmations as well, jumping up and down. Shellington put his paws together, in the way Tunip saw the professor do it. It's settled then, Shellington said cheerfully. He moved over to where the stove was, directing at it with his paw. The first thing you should know is the stove. Like I said before, an electric current heats up the dark circles on the countertop. There are 4 knobs here, and each knob activates a particular circle. Tunip watched Shellington, a bit dazed at their good fortune. They were able to get someone to help them learn about the kitchen without any contempt. And even better yet. And at this he smiled, relaxing his posture as he listened to the lesson. They got a new friend.